Hey everyone, time for another video. Today we're going to be taking a look back at the Intel Pentium E2180 and assessing its stock and overclock performance in a couple of benchmarks, which are Cinebench R15 and SuperPi 1 million, and a few games as well, such as Fallout 4, GTA 5, Tomb Raider and Crysis 3. The Pentium E2180 was released in Q3 of 2007 and features either 105 million or 167 million transistors, depending on who you ask. It's based on the Allendale architecture, which is a cut-down version of the Cornrow architecture from Intel, and uses a 65nm fabrication process. The E2180 is a 2 GHz dual-core CPU with no hyperthreading on the LGA 775 socket, featuring 2 MB of L2 cache, but with 1 MB disabled, giving you an effective 1 MB of L2 cache to play with. It also has an 800 MHz frontside bus, no turbo boosting and a TDP of 65 watts. The 2180's original release price was $85, which is around £60 or €68, but we managed to get it for the grand total of 25 British pence from CEX, which is around 35 US cents or 28 Euro cents. An absolute bargain for a dual-core CPU that still offers decent performance for a general everyday PC. The system we'll be using today features 4GB of DDR2 RAM at 800 MHz, a GTX 1080 from my personal system, and Windows 7 64-bit. So let's get started. First up is Cinebench R15, a popular benchmark that utilises your processor's power to render a photorealistic 3D scene. The Celeron in the previous video took over 22 minutes to complete this, but our E2180 at its stock 2 GHz took just over 8 minutes to complete Cinebench, so it's time to speed up a little again. In the end, the Pentium E2180 managed a score of 85, which you can see in the screenshot. However, when overclocked to 2.75 GHz, the highest our RAM would let us go for now, it managed 115 points, a 35% increase in performance. With the overclock, the RAM is running at around 916 MHz here. Next up is SuperPi 1 million, a popular benchmark with extreme overclockers, which tests how fast your CPU can calculate pi to 1 million decimal places. It is a single-threaded benchmark, so it only uses one of your processor scores. Across 10 runs, the fastest time we achieved was 30.407 seconds, but when overclocked to 2.75 GHz, it managed a fastest run of 22.563 seconds across 10 runs, 7.844 seconds faster than the standard score. Now it's time for the first game today, Fallout 4, which will be running at 1080p with FX80 on the lowest settings we can, with VSync disabled through a third-party launcher. Fallout 4 released worldwide on 10th of November 2015 on PC, PS4 and Xbox One, and is set in the aftermath of a nuclear fallout in which you are the sole survivor from Vault 111. For this game I had to downclock the E2180 slightly from 2.75 GHz to 2.63 GHz, as the memory was a bit unstable in this game. With the new overclock, the memory was now running at 874 MHz, not much of a difference. At the start of the game before you run to the vault, the game actually runs really well, with only very occasional stutter. The FPS here even reached into the 70s and 80s. This didn't last however, as on the run to the vault after the bomb, the game becomes an unplayable mess, with input lag, constant FPS dips to the low 20s and massive stuttering as you're running. Across a 30-minute fraps benchmark, the E2180 averaged 42 frames per second, with 1% and 0.1% lows of 14 and 4 FPS respectively, making the E2180 an awful choice for this game. Next it's on to GTA 5, which will be running at 1080p at the lowest settings with our 2.63 GHz overclock. GTA 5 released on 17th September 2013 on PS3 and Xbox 360, 18th of November 2014 for PS4 and Xbox One, 14th of April 2015 for PC. It is set in Los Santos, which is based on Southern California, and is centered on the stories of Michael, Trevor and Franklin. The E2180 performed a lot better than the Celeron in the previous video, but that's not to say it performed well. The E2180 had a lot of trouble on this one. It was extremely stuttery throughout gameplay, and had a fair amount of input lag, which often made it hard to handle the vehicles. The game frequently locked up, and the FPS often dipped below 20, making this a pretty horrible experience. I did attempt a 30-minute fraps benchmark, but the game decided to repeatedly crash during this, so I just gave up. Next up is Tomb Raider, a game released in 2013 on the 5th of March for PC, Xbox 360 and PS3, 23rd of January 2014 for Mac, and 27th of April 2016 for Linux. It is based on the character of Lara Croft and is an origin story completely rebooting the series. We'll be running the game at 1080p at Ultra settings, as I found Ultra ran surprisingly well. There was some minor stuttering in outdoor gameplay, however this didn't really interfere with gameplay that much, as I still found this game to be fairly enjoyable to play on this CPU. On occasion though, the game did stutter noticeably, which the 30-minute fraps benchmark shows, with an average FPS of 60 and 1% and 0.1% lows of 28 and 20 FPS respectively. Now for the final game we'll be testing today, Crysis 3, which will be running at 1080p on the low settings with our 2.63 GHz overclock on the E2180. The game released on 18th of February 2013 in the US and a few days later in the UK. Crysis 3, unlike the Celeron I tested previously, actually runs this time, and rather surprisingly it does reasonably well. Unfortunately, the fraps overlay wouldn't display in this game, but the game does have a console code to enable the FPS counter, which I'll put in the description below. In the first mission, the FPS is around 35 to 45, with some minor stutter and dips to 25 FPS happening occasionally as well. The game doesn't stutter that much however, and with no input lag I found myself enjoying playing this game quite a bit and would happily play on this CPU in the future if I had to. Overall, the E2180 isn't as bad as I thought it would be. In games like Fallout 4 and GTA 5 it definitely isn't up to the task, but runs Tomb Raider and surprisingly Crysis 3 reasonably well. For older games this would be a great choice of CPU, as it performs well in general non-gaming tasks too, and you can get it extremely cheaply.